Hey everyone, I thought I'd make a video comparing the S10e and the OnePlus 6T. Just a disclaimer with regards to this video, it's just my own personal opinion after spending some time with both phones. And I had upgraded from an iPhone 10 prior to this, so I don't really have a bias between Android or iOS. I seem to alternate between the two operating systems anyway, but this 6T I purchased first before then trading in my iPhone 10 to get the S10e. And I do apologize that you'll be able to see my reflection there in the darker screen. But I thought I'd start off with the build quality of these two. So personally, I prefer the way that the S10e feels in my hand. I haven't really liked Samsung phones in the past because I always felt they were a bit tacky looking, but they've done a great job with the S10e this time around. I really like how that screen sort of looks as almost like it's a painted picture on a flat display, sort of similar to how I felt when I first got the iPhone 10. That's not to say that the 6T feels cheap by any means, but I think it's just size for me. I've got some pretty small hands, so holding this and using this as a phone, putting it against my face, it just didn't feel quite proportionate for me. And let alone putting this in pockets is much harder than putting the S10e in my pocket. I'll just do a very quick size comparison. I'm sorry that the angle of the camera is not so great here, but you can see that there's quite a bit of difference in terms of height and even a little bit in terms of width. So definitely felt when using these phones. However, the great thing about the 6T's screen size is media consumption. So even with that little teardrop notch there, watching videos on the 6T is just fantastic. And the screen is it looks great, even though it's perhaps not as high PPI. I don't think you can really see a difference with my eyes. As I said before, the screen quality of the S10e is fantastic. I actually really like that hole punch notch thingo, whatever they're calling it these days. I don't think it detracts from the design. In fact, I think I prefer it over the teardrop that's seen on the 6T. So yeah, I think the screen goes to the S10e for me. But if you do like a bigger screen, then the 6T is no sort of it's not a weakling compared to this S10e at all. I really like this fingerprint sensor on the S10e. I mean, a lot of people say that it's a little bit too high, and I have pretty small hands, and even then I actually quite like it quite high, so I don't have accidental touches, so I don't pick the phone up and then accidentally unlock it. I have to quite actively unlock it like that, rather than holding it generally. So I don't mind it. So I really like that. And when I do use the phone with my left hand, I've done it so that my left index finger is also a registered fingerprint. So no issues. The OnePlus 6T has a really cool fingerprint trick. I think it was one of the first few with the inbuilt sort of in-screen fingerprint sensor, and you probably can't see it there, but there's just a little faint animation that tells you where to put your finger, and you put it on and it unlocks. How does it work in real life? I'd say not too bad. Not as bad as I thought it'd be, but in terms of accuracy, say in 10 fingerprint touches, 9 times out of 10 this S10e would get it, or even 10 times out of 10, whereas the 6T would work about 8 times out of 10. It's pretty hard to see on the screen exactly where you're supposed to put your finger, and there'll be little hiccups like that where you go to the lock screen instead, and then it probably uses something like Face ID to unlock it if you have that customization sort of picked, which I have. So the reason why that unlocked then, I think, was more Face ID, or Face Unlock rather, than my fingerprint. I really like One UI this time around. I, once again, didn't like Samsung in the past for TouchWiz. I thought it looked really bad. I didn't really like Samsung apps. I didn't like the way that they made everything look a bit cartoony. You know, you only have to go into the Galaxy Store's theme store to really know what I'm talking about. But I think the implementation of One UI this time around, I really like it. I've used a Google Pixel 2 XL prior to this, or prior to the iPhone 10. So I know what stock Android is like, and I don't mind the skin. I haven't even put on Nova Launcher. I'm just using the Samsung's launcher. And I think that's a big testimony to how well it works. With OnePluses, this phone here, I've rooted it. So it does have a custom ROM on it. Oh no, actually no, I lie. I've just rooted it, but I don't have a custom ROM. It's just it's just a theme that I have that, oh, I don't know why the screen's gone so dark, sorry. I'll have to brighten that up there. It's a theme that I used via Substratum. So yeah, in terms of both UIs, I sort of don't mind Samsung's implementation at all. OnePlus is also doing a great job. So both get a tick of approval for me. Next is phone calls. So I guess this is to do with sizing, and the issue I have with the 6T size. When I put this phone to my ear, it takes me a while to find exactly where the earpiece is, and then to put that against my ear so I can hear it clearly. I don't know if other people have had this issue, but I just found it really challenging to sort of move around my ear, and I don't know whether phones have a little bit of conductive audio where it sort of vibrates into your ear. If so, then this one sort of lacks it, because I have to really maneuver the phone around my face before I can hear properly. The S10e doesn't seem to have that issue. I don't know whether, once again, it's to do with size, and so it's pretty easy to just pick up, put to your ear, no issues. But I found that I had a bit of difficulty with the phone calls on the 6T. The good thing about the 6T is its speed. So this comes with, I do believe it's 8 gigs of RAM, and this is 6 gigs of RAM, both of which are, you know, really fantastic. I don't think you'll have an issue, but for some reason the 6T just feels a slight tad bit speedier for me. I don't think I've ever had apps hiccup on me, and funnily enough with the S10e, I think I've already had a couple of crashes, and it was on day one of me getting the phone, which was a bit disappointing, but it's reassuring that it hasn't happened since then. So I don't know whether it's the 2 gigs of RAM that's really made a difference, but I find that the apps remain in memory a bit better on the 6T as well. So if speed is really important to you, and you know, a matter of microseconds would, you know, you're the type of person who would notice it, I would pick the 6T. The cameras, now this is probably the biggest weak point of the 6T. The camera, even with Gcam installed, which is the camera that I do have installed at the moment, the photos aren't great, and maybe that's just my experience coming from a Pixel 2 XL and an iPhone 10, both of which took amazing photos. I was pretty disappointed when I had the 6T, and even with Gcam installed, there were times where it was too slow to take the shot, and I missed the moment, or you know, the app would crash, and that's pretty poor for a phone. You know, I can't imagine parents missing the moment because their phone camera app or camera is just not good enough. And the S10e camera is, as the other reviews have mentioned, it's pretty fantastic. On the contrary, the great thing that the 6T has, which the Samsung does not have, is the alert slider. So it's on silent at the moment, so if I change it, it goes to vibrate, ring, back to vibrate, to silent. That you can do with the screen off. There you go. think that's I think OnePlus has been doing it for a long time. Stick with it. It's fantastic. Super handy. Really good when you're stuck in a situation where you don't really want to whip out your phone to change the setting. You can just do it in your pocket quietly. Just change it with that little slider there. The S10e doesn't really have that. What it does have is a Bixby button, and I laugh because I don't know anyone who uses Bixby. But the great thing about it now is with an app which unfortunately does cost a couple of dollars, you can remap the Bixby button to whatever you like. Samsung was pretty generous and allowed you to customize a Bixby button inbuilt. However, there's only a limited list of what it will allow the button to do, and Bixby still has to be an option. So whether it's 1 click instead of 2, or 2 clicks instead of 1, Bixby still needs to be a function. With the app, you can sort of abolish Bixby, and for me, with a double click, it changes my phone to silent, and double click again, and it unsilences the phone. So this works, I believe, with the screen off. I lie, it did not work. So yeah, it's just something that I think the app does allow it. I just need to plug it into computer to customize it a bit more. The other thing I really like about the OnePlus 6T is it's always on display. My S10e also has always on display, but I'm currently using an app called I think it's called Holy Light, which allows me to have a little ring of light around the camera notch to be my notification light. So I've customized it so, for example, if I have a Telegram message, it lights around blue. If I have WhatsApp message, it lights around green. That takes up the always on display, so I've actually turned it off. It does drain the battery a little bit as well, so just be aware of that. Sorry for the fingerprints. The good thing about the always on display on the 6T is the way that it also navigates notifications, and I'll just put in a little clip here to show you what that looks like. Alrighty, so the other great thing about the OnePlus 6T is, I guess, if you're really into speed, I'll pick the OnePlus 6T. And the second option why I'd pick the OnePlus 6T is its battery life. I've never had a phone that's had as good of a battery life as this. I know iPhones are really famous for its standby or idle time, and I agree. If I had an iPhone and I kept it overnight, the battery, it drains maybe a few percents, or percentages, or is that grammatically correct? I don't know. But this phone also does a fantastic job overnight on idle. It does a fantastic job even when you're using it. I was charging it every 2 days, and I'm a pretty heavy user. That's with about 5 to 6 hours plus screen on time. This battery has been undefeatable, and I think that's helped by the size of the phone. So the bigger the size, the longer the battery life, and also the screen, it's not as high resolution as others, and thus uses less battery. But for a phone that keeps its battery for that long, it's still fairly thin. So in OnePlus it done a great job with the battery life. The S10e, this is the Exynos version that I have here in Australia. It's okay. It's fairly average, to be honest. It sort of reminds me of what my iPhone 10 used to do, meaning I get through a day no worries, but no way I can push it to 2 days. 1 day and a half is pushing it. I would not be comfortable in doing that unless I had chargers at work or charger in my car. So that's pretty much a very quick summary of the two. I'm hoping that this generates some discussion. I'm happy to answer any questions in the comment section. And once again, these are just my own personal opinions about using the phones after some time. I'll probably have some more insights later on down the track. Thanks for watching. Take care.